Good evening, and welcome once again to another episode of The Last Clue. I hope you and your family are safe, healthy, and looking after one another. Usually, when a crime takes place, especially a murder, the killer's first thought is how to escape the law, how to outsmart the police, cover their tracks, and disappear without a trace. But somewhere in this world, there exists a country where the killer's mind works differently. Here, pulling the trigger or plunging the knife isn't the final challenge. The real question that burns in their mind afterward is, what will you do with a body? And in this place, the choices are few, the risks are high, and the clock starts ticking the moment the victim takes their last breath. Here, murder isn't just about taking a life, it's about surviving the aftermath. Today's story is about a 28-year-old model from Hong Kong. Hong Kong, often described as one of the safest places in the world. A bustling city of nearly 7.5 million people, packed into just 1,100 square kilometers. Here, crime is almost a rarity. In an entire year, the number of murders barely touches 20, sometimes even less. Robberies, perhaps 50, 60, or at most 70 cases. And beyond that, almost nothing worth reporting. In fact, for most of the police force here, there's hardly any action. The law runs smoothly, the order is firm, and danger seems far away. But every rule has an exception. And in this peaceful city, one crime would shock the entire nation and reveal a darkness no one thought existed. People from all over the world come to Hong Kong. And because of its remarkably low crime rate, the city has built a unique reputation for safety and order. But here's the question after a murder. What do you do with the body? Why does this question even matter so much here? Before we step into the real story, let me give you a bit of context. Hong Kong is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Space is a luxury, and property prices are among the highest in the world. You might have seen those viral images on social media, tiny apartments stacked like cages, cramped rooms with just enough space for a bed and a door. In such a city, hiding anything, let alone a dead body, is almost impossible. And that's what makes today's case so disturbing. There's even a building in Hong Kong that's said to house nearly 30,000 people under one roof. That's how crowded this city is. With so many people packed into such little space, there is hardly a single moment when you're truly alone or unseen. Step outside your door, and you're surrounded by towering apartment blocks. One elevator might be shared by over 100 residents, all coming and going at every hour of the day. Even inside your home, privacy is a rare luxury. The walls between apartments are so thin that every sound, every whisper, every movement can be heard by your neighbors. In a place like this, you cannot hide. Not from strangers, not from the people living next door, and certainly not from the truth. First of all, in Hong Kong, you are always surrounded by people day and night. Privacy is almost impossible. Second, there's the matter of cars. The public transport system here is excellent, so most people rely on it instead of owning a vehicle. Add to that the high cost of living, and cars become a luxury few can afford. And even if you own one, parking is a nightmare. In 2019, a single parking space, just a slot for one car, was sold for around 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. Imagine that, paying the price of a small home in other countries just to park your car. So naturally, very few people choose to drive here. In Hong Kong, very few people are fortunate enough to own an individual house with a garden or open space. Such places are almost non-existent. In the heart of the city, you won't find rivers, ponds, or even secluded drains. And that's exactly why, after a murder, disposing of a body here becomes almost impossible. Step out of your apartment, and you're already surrounded. Thousands of people live in your building alone, watching from every floor, every corner. Take the body to a car. Most people don't even own one. And without a parking space, even that option disappears. In a city like this, there is nowhere to hide. Even if you somehow manage to take the body far away, where would you dispose of it? There are no rivers, no ponds, no hidden drains. Want to bury it. There's no open, deserted land here, and even if there were, someone would be passing by at any moment. That's why it's often said about Hong Kong that a killer here doesn't spend as much time thinking about the act of murder as he does about the question after the killing. Where will I hide the body? And in most cases, the answer is there's no place to hide it at all. Which is why, when a murder does happen in Hong Kong, it sends shockwaves through the entire city. And such a crime took place on February 24th, 2023. In Hong Kong lived a young woman named Abby Choi, just 28 years old. Abby came from a wealthy family. Her father was in the construction business, with projects spread across mainland China. She had known luxury since childhood. Her mother was a fashion designer, and naturally, Abby developed a love for fashion as well. Following her passion, she stepped into the glamorous world of modeling. Soon, she became one of Hong Kong's most recognized and successful models. But her personal life was far more complex. At just 18, Abby married for the first time. That marriage brought her 2 children, but it lasted only 3 years. She married in 2016 and divorced in 2019. After the divorce, Abby found love again and remarried. From her second marriage came 2 more children, bringing her total to 4. Despite moving on and building a new life, Abby maintained a close bond with her first family, her ex-husband, and even her former father-in-law. And this connection would one day lead her straight into danger. One reason Abby Choi stayed connected to her first family was the 2 children she shared with her ex-husband. They were the link that kept them in touch, even after the divorce. Back when they were still married, Abby had purchased a luxurious 4-bedroom apartment in one of Hong Kong's most elite neighborhoods, home to the city's wealthiest residents. She put the property under her father-in-law's name. He was a retired Hong Kong police sergeant, a man who had served the force for years. The apartment was worth around $1 million, about 8 million Hong Kong dollars, a staggering price in one of the world's most expensive real estate markets. Even after her divorce, Abby never took the property back. It remained in her father-in-law's name, a gesture that reflected the closeness they still shared. Meanwhile, Abby's modeling career soared. She attended high-profile fashion events, traveled to Paris, and even appeared on the cover of a major fashion magazine in February 2023, just around Valentine's Day. But while she was in Paris, far from home, dark plans were taking shape behind her back. Certain people in her life were plotting her murder. The planning was meticulous, but as always in Hong Kong, the question loomed: if we kill her, what will we do with the body? They thought about it carefully. In the heart of the city, such a crime would be almost impossible to hide. So their eyes turned to a location about 35 kilometers away from the bustling streets of Hong Kong, a quieter, more rural area, the kind of place where fewer eyes might be watching. The killers had already laid the groundwork. They rented a 3-story building with a ground floor. This was their first step in the conspiracy. Once the place was secured, they simply waited for the right moment. That moment came on February 24th, 2023. Abby Choi had just returned to Hong Kong. That afternoon, she was scheduled to take her children to school. One of her daughters had afternoon classes, and as usual, Abby's driver was there to take her. But this wasn't just any driver, it was her former brother-in-law, the younger brother of her ex-husband. Abby left home with him, but she never made it to the school. She didn't return home that evening either. By nightfall, her family began to panic. Her mother hadn't heard from her, and both her ex-husband and current husband claimed they had no idea where she was. Worried, her first husband, her second husband, and her parents began searching for her. When they failed to find her, they finally went to the police and filed a missing person report. The police began their investigation by contacting everyone close to Abby, her parents, siblings, ex-husband, current husband, and other relatives. But something fell off. Her ex-husband, her former father-in-law, and her former brother-in-law all gave conflicting stories about where they had been. Still, the former father-in-law was a retired Hong Kong police sergeant, so at first, their words weren't dismissed outright. But the police kept digging. By February 26th, more than 48 hours after she vanished, there was still no sign of Abby. Then, the police decided to verify the family's alibis using CCTV footage. That's when the truth began to surface. The movements described by her ex-husband and former father-in-law didn't match the camera records. In fact, CCTV footage revealed something far more suspicious. They were seen leaving Hong Kong City together. The police traced their journey step by step through different camera angles, following them out of the city until the trail led to the outskirts, in a quiet neighborhood far from the crowded heart of Hong Kong. The CCTV trail finally led police to a building on the outskirts of the city. The cameras captured Abby Choi's former father-in-law and ex-husband entering through the ground floor. When investigators learned about this location, a team was immediately dispatched. The landlord confirmed that the ground floor had been rented out, and the tenant's name made the officers' blood run cold. It was Abby's ex-father-in-law. The officers suspected Abby might still be there. They unlocked the door and stepped inside. It was a simple two-room unit. The bedroom was almost empty, no furniture, no personal belongings, nothing to suggest anyone actually lived there. But when they walked into the kitchen, the scene turned chilling. There, neatly arranged, was a collection of disturbing tools: a meat grinder, an electric saw, 2 types of cleavers, a hammer, a protective face shield, and a black raincoat. Abby had last been seen on February 24th, wearing a white t-shirt, white pants, and white slippers, carrying a distinctive purple handbag. That very bag was now inside the house. The officers also noticed 2 massive cooking pots. When they lifted the lids, a thick soup was simmering. Floating in it were chunks of vegetables: green radish, carrots, and something else. Nearby stood a large refrigerator. When the door swung open, the truth became unbearable. Inside were human remains: 2 severed legs and 2 arms. The police understood instantly. But where was the rest of the body? They returned to the pots. Using a ladle, an officer stirred the broth. And there, beneath the vegetables, they found the remains of a human head in one pot and other body parts in the second. The evidence was immediately sent for forensic testing. Arrest orders were issued. Abby's ex-father-in-law, her former brother-in-law, and others involved were taken into custody. During interrogation, a grim detail emerged. For the past 2 days, 2 of the suspects had been making trips to a graveyard on the city's outskirts, where a small deserted patch of land lay undisturbed. They finally confessed the rest of Abby Choi's remains were buried there. Transporting everything in one bag, they admitted, would have drawn too much suspicion. The discovery inside the rented flat left little doubt this was no accident. The suspect's plan had been to slowly cook the remains and destroy all traces. There was never any intention to consume the body. Police began rounding up everyone involved. The ex-father-in-law, the former brother-in-law, and other accomplices were already in custody. But the ex-husband was missing. 2 days later, officers caught him on a speedboat, attempting to flee Hong Kong via sea route. His destination, a foreign country. Once captured, he joined the others in the interrogation room. Soon after, Abby Choi's former mother-in-law was also arrested, accused of knowing about the crime and doing nothing to stop it. When investigators demanded an explanation, a chilling account emerged. On February 24th, Abby had been on her way to pick up her daughter from school. Her brother-in-law, who worked as a taxi driver, picked her up in his 7-seater vehicle. Abby trusted him more than most in the family. But partway through the journey, as they drove through a tunnel, he made an excuse to stop. There, Abby was transferred into another car. Inside that vehicle, investigators believe she was struck on the head with a heavy object and killed instantly. The attack was no spur-of-the-moment decision. Days earlier, the suspects had rented a 2-room house in a remote area. After the killing, Abby's body was taken there. The killer wore a black raincoat and a full-face shield protection to ensure no blood would touch his clothes, hair, or skin. In that kitchen, he began dismembering the body. The hands and feet were stored in a refrigerator. But disposing of the remains was a bigger challenge. With constant crowds around Hong Kong, they feared being caught if they tried to bury the body whole. Their solution was grotesque: cook the remains in large pots, bit by bit, to make disposal easier. Soup was made from various body parts, including the head. By the time police arrived, the process was already underway. Confronted with the evidence, the suspects confessed. But the motive was rooted in greed. During Abby's first marriage, relations with her in-laws were strong even after the divorce. She had purchased a luxurious 4-bedroom apartment, 1,820 square feet, worth around $1 million. She had put it in her ex-father-in-law's name. Later, when relations soured, Abby planned to sell the property. She told her ex-husband and his father-in-law about the decision. That, police believe, was the spark that ignited this brutal plot. They began to think legally. She was no longer their daughter-in-law. She was simply the wife of their estranged son, and that meant she had the right to sell the property. But if she sold it, how much would they lose? The land was still in her father-in-law's name, and if she were gone, there would be no one left to claim it. And so, driven by greed, a father, his son, the son's brother, the wife, and the children's mother, along with the father-in-law, mother-in-law, husband, brother-in-law, and even one more accomplice, came together with a chilling plan to kill their ex-daughter-in-law. They also devised a way to dispose of the body, knowing well that in Hong Kong, it's nearly impossible to hide something so large without drawing attention. But their plan failed. The truth surfaced, the police arrested them all, and body parts were found scattered in the same area. In Hong Kong, the law once allowed for the death penalty for murder. But with time, the law changed now. Whether you kill one person or 10, the maximum punishment is life imprisonment. Which means that even if all of them are proven guilty, they will face nothing more than life behind bars. For now, all of them remain in custody without bail. The court hearing is set to begin in October, by which time the police will have completed their investigation and submitted their report. Until then, they will remain in jail. And that was the story of the Hong Kong model whose head was found neatly placed inside a suitcase. That's all for today's story. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and never ignore the last clue. Then hit that subscribe button now, because the next tale might just be the one that haunts you forever. Subscribe because the truth won't wait. I'll see you next time with another chilling, unforgettable story. Until then, take care of yourself and your loved ones. Thank you for watching.